Growing up, for the most part, I was a Nintendo kid. I had a PS1, but it was a hand-me-down from my older brother, and I did not really have any notable games on it outside of Crash Bandicoot. I really became a PlayStation fan during the PS3 generation, and never really found the time to go back and experience some of those PS1 games that really gave the original PlayStation so much personality. I recently finished the new Astro Bot, and as good of a game as it is, the one thing I left thinking the most after I rolled credits was just how many important PlayStation franchises I haven't ever dipped my toes into, Ape Escape being one of the more prominent ones. Luckily, I recently decided to splurge for PlayStation Plus Premium, where Ape Escape is included as a quick and easy download. I also played this game alongside a couple friends for our biweekly podcast on Greg's Game Rooms channel, if you're interested in a longer form discussion on Ape Escape. So going into playing the game, I knew very little about Ape Escape. Basically everything I knew about the series I drew from the title. I figured you'd be capturing escaped apes, and well, there you go, I was right. The game starts with a quick cutscene to set up the story. Basically, one of the monkeys from an amusement park gets his hand on a fancy helmet that makes him smart, and then he releases the other monkeys and is trying to go back in time to make this the planet of the apes. Cutscenes show up a few times during different points of the game, and they're cute, I guess. The story is silly, and the voice acting, to be nice, is very of its time. Ape Escape is technically a level-based 3D platformer, but rather than focusing on the platforming itself, Ape Escape is really more of a hide-and-seek game. Every level has a target number of monkeys to recapture, and you, the red spiky-haired protagonist, aptly named Spike, run around with your super cool time net that sends the monkeys back to where they belong, as well as a lightsaber-like stun baton to defend yourself from the other enemies. The other monsters you'll need to avoid in these levels are pretty unremarkable in my opinion, aside from some neat boss enemies that will show up here and there as you go, but really the star of the shows are the monkeys themselves. They have all different abilities of their own, sometimes piloting vehicles, sometimes shooting at you, but mostly they just run away from you and throw bananas, and it's always very funny to me. You will get other equipment, or gadgets as it's called in-game, along the way to spice things up, but the net and baton are your bread and butter for the most part. Ape Escape required the Dual Shock controller, which introduced the dual joysticks to PlayStation. For anyone who doesn't know, the original PlayStation controller did not have joysticks, and personal opinion, that original controller was heinous. But either way, Ape Escape makes great use of the dual joysticks. You run around with the left stick, and the right stick, rather than being for the camera like we might expect these days, was used for directional swings for the net and baton, as well as some other forms of input for the other gadgets. Took some getting used to, but once I was comfortable with resetting the camera with L1, using the right stick for some added directional control of my swings, it actually worked pretty well. As the game goes on, you beat more levels, you'll get more and more gadgets that really change the game and make creative use of that right stick. Some favorites of mine were the Sky Flyer, allowing you to get more vertical mobility as well as glide by spinning the stick in a circle, and the RC Car, which allows you to get into smaller, otherwise unreachable areas, and pretty impressively, you can control this car with the right stick while you run independently with the character with the left stick. This allowed for some cool challenges where you have to run alongside the car while it's going through obstacles, while platforming with Spike to keep the car within camera view. Early on, these levels are very simple when it's just you and the net. You have a nice jump, but in my opinion, lackluster double jump, so it really just relies on fun level design in the early stages. I was having a good time, but not loving the game at this point, but the game really improves as you get more gadgets and the levels can put more interesting challenges in front of you. The added vertical mobility I got from the Sky Flyer I mentioned earlier let the levels add some more platforming. Getting the slingshot added some puzzles where I had to hit buttons to open doors and allowed me to handle some more annoying enemies from a distance. By the end of the game, with a full arsenal of gadgets, I was thoroughly enjoying exploring each level and did not feel restricted in any way like I did early on. There are tons of fun, memorable levels in this game. You're going to go through different time periods, which isn't always super evident in the level design, but there was plenty of environmental variety. Beaches, forests, snowy tundras, things you might expect to see in a video game, but also more interestingly themed levels like the insides of a sea monster a la Jabu Jabu's belly from Ocarina of Time, a cool castle that winds in on itself with lots to explore, a Great Wall of China themed level, to name a few. Levels were colorful and fun to look at while providing plenty to explore and come back to with later upgrades to find more monkeys. That all being said, there were a couple annoying things in Ape Escape that had me frustrated from time to time. Some smaller gripes included the very fast, hard to take down UFO monkeys, and a later game vehicle that took some getting used to steer properly, but one thing that really annoyed me was anytime a level had me get into the raft. This thing was awful, and I hated everything about it. You steer the raft by rotating each of the sticks, one stick per oar, but if you're even slightly out of sync, you will not steer straight and you'll just end up going off course or spinning in a circle. You meet this terrible method of traversal early, and I met this thing on a bad day and almost put the game down altogether because of it. Maybe it was just user error, but this user thinks it's just a crappy boat. Outside of the levels themselves, one more cool thing about this game is there are a few built-in mini-games. In each level there are hidden collectibles called Spectre coins, and by collecting enough of these, you will unlock the 3 different minigames. There's a ski racing one that I found to be a good little distraction, a monkey boxing one that I could not quite wrap my head around. I just kind of threw limp monkey fists at the other monkeys, which admittedly was at least pretty funny. And then there's a twin stick space shooter that was also pretty neat. You don't have to interact with these at all, but I found that to be a nice little bonus. Overall, I thought Ape Escape was a really good time, and I'm glad I put some time aside to play it. If you have PS Premium and you want to check it out, it'll only take you a few hours to roll credits. And if you're a trophy collector kind of gamer, you'll basically get a platinum for beating the game as long as you're somewhat thorough with finding the coins in each level. I have my fingers crossed we might get another one of these games down the road. Maybe Astro Bot will do its job and derive interest to these older franchises and Ape Escape can get its shot again. Thanks for watching. If you like this video and want to give it a thumbs up, that would mean a lot, and make sure you get to see more from me by hitting that subscribe button down below as well. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I was also on a podcast releasing alongside this video on my friend Craig's channel where we discussed Ape Escape in a little more detail. Check it out. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time.